Hello, this is Ramirez with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts, and today we're going to talk about helmets and pierced plate and how it all works and why. So, we're going to start out with something that isn't pierced plate. This is a visor to one of my helmets. I'm going to do a simple cheat that I learned from Brian over at he does a lot of the stuff for the SCA Harnischfechten experiment. He got these, they are carpenter's pencils. They're a quarter by half inch, so they can kind of show if the slots on your visor are the correct size, because if they are, you shouldn't be able to jam this through, which clearly I can do at several points on this visor. This one's a little tricky, but it actually does go in there, so it's barely legal for Decoven Accord. By the Lynx Argent, all you have to do is put two of these together. So this will pass the Lynx Argent rules, but it will not pass the Decoven Accords. Not by much. Personally, I would let this fly at our events only because, like at our practice, I know the weapons we're using, and I know that it can't get through there. As a matter of fact, do I have it here? Yes, I do. This is one of our spear tips, and I know for a fact it will not go through that eye slot. So, once again, it kind of depends on what group, but technically, if I want to go to an event doing Decoven Accords, I need to fix that. And I plan to. And you should plan to. How? With pierced plate. As you can see, I can see you through this, and you can see me through it. This is 16 gauge stainless perf plate. I got mine off Amazon, and I'll show you a helmet where I've used this to fix that visor problem. But before I do, let's talk about what pierced plate is. It's basically steel with a bunch of really tiny holes. This is very different from the mesh you might see in a HEMA mask or a fencing mask, where that's wires that are kind of crossed. This is a solid plate, and in my case, this is 16 gauge steel, which is I think the minimum requirement. So if you go anything lighter than this, 18, 20 gauge, it's not going to work. It has to be at least 16 gauge. As I said, got it off Amazon. I think I paid less than $20 for this square, which was bigger before I actually used some of it, but still got plenty more, which is good because I have projects like that visor that I still need it for. So, downsides to having pierced plate is that anywhere you need pierced plate counts as open face. Some people do make visors, entire visors for your helmet, out of pierced plate. Plus sides is you notice how I can see you and you can see me, and I can breathe through this a whole lot easier than a regular visor, like the one I showed at the top of this video. Because of that, according to Decoven Accord, and I think Lynx Accord as well, it doesn't count as a solid plate. Whereas if someone struck me in the face with that hound skull visor, it would not count. It counts as armor. This generally doesn't count as armor. Now, once again, it depends on the specifics of your event. I was at an armored tournament in Northern Virginia, and because they did not allow you to have visors, even if they met the standards of the Decoven Accords, everything had to have pierced plate or it wasn't allowed. So because of that, they said, we're going to treat all pierced plate visors as plate. I wouldn't go into harness events expecting that, but that was what it was. So without any further ado, let me bring out my first example. Just going to pause this for a moment. It's just hard. I don't have all of these up in front of me. This is my main fighting bassinet. You'll notice that it has a pierced plate visor. If I do unstrap this, this is a clap visor design, so it has the, so I might need to pause this again to get this open. Now we got that adjusting the locking strap out. You can see that lifts up, and then we have their normal, just normal bassinet. And yeah, it has pierce plate. It has a little plate on the front. This was done by Armstreet. If you're going to have something like this done, I strongly recommend that you have it done at the time you order the helmet, because then they'll make sure it fits. There are, there are secondary market people who will make you a pierce plate visor. The downside is if they don't have the same helmet you have, it's hard for them to make sure it fits correctly. So if you're going to order, let's say this does have a normal visor to it. It's not the one I just showed you, but it's another visor. It's a beautiful closed plate, like a dog face visor. And it works really great. It's up to spec for DeKoven, but sometimes an event might require you to have pierce plate. So in that case, like this has the pierce plate visor, which I did order at the same time that I ordered my helmet. Let's take a look at another helmet. Now, this is another bassinet. The difference is this particular visor is an experimental one from Armstreet. It was the first pierce plate visor they made for this particular helmet. This is the one that hound skull visor I showed you earlier. It also attaches to this. You just take out the brass pins and you replace the visor. Nice thing, and the reason I got this, you might say, why Ramirez, do you need two bassinets? The reason is this push button here, because that is a much quicker release to get air. The other one has a strap. You saw me undoing that earlier, and it's just a pain in the butt to try to lift the visor up, because traditionally clap visors don't have that securing strap. You just lift it. The problem is it's not secure and not safe for what we do. This one, I can just lift it up. I can just drop it down, and the plus side is that locking pin does mean it's safe. This can't just flap up or come up independently. One downside, and I think why Armstreet does not make this part of their standard line as far as the visor, is because you'll notice the other one that I had that little metal strip going down it to help support it. This might be a little weaker in terms of that. I can't tell. I think it's very, very solid, but I'd have to ask them why they don't regularly produce this. But if it's something that you like, the Kingsguard style with the Latin expressions on the brass, you might contact Armstreet. They might be willing to make you this visor. But this was an experimental one that they had, and they had it on a sale. And I was like, I need more pierce plate visors in my life. So I went ahead and I got it. I was pleasantly surprised because normally they don't put a riveted aventail on the Kingsguard. It's a normal butted mail, which I would not have wanted. But this one did have a riveted aventail. So I was like, well, riveted aventail, pierce plate visor, good price. I'm going to go ahead and get it. So I end up getting this one. And once again, for fighting purposes, this counts as an open face. In other words, this would be as if, by that catch pin again, as if I wasn't wearing it. As if I was like, this is my face. And I'm like, hi, I'm here and I'm talking through here. Anyone who would stab this area, this counts as open face, and therefore this would be a killing shot. If someone hits me here, even if that's down, this is considered still as not being there. So that is one of the downsides, at least as from most Harnischfechten events, to having pierce plate. So let's get to another example. My last example, and probably the most relevant, is my Saleh. Ooh, brasswork, lots of holes. Closing visor. You'll notice that gold there is the pierced plate. It's actually the same pierced plate I showed you. I'll talk a little bit more about why it's colored differently. But let's go ahead and show that to you. If this is unlocked, which I believe it is now. So originally it did not have that pierced plate, and without it, the gap would have been way too big to use it for Harnischfechten. I'd gotten this originally from GS Armory. The price was right, but it did not come with that, and I had hoped that the vision slot, would be small enough that I could get away with using it. And it turned out I couldn't unless I had installed that pierced plate. This is actually a closed helmet, so just as a aside, you'll notice that it does have a pin release here. If I press that down, I do all this. The whole face, the bever, opens up, and then that can close, and I can lock it. And I can raise the bever and close the visor, and now, because of that pierced plate, you can't actually strike through it. So, how did I go from this not having pierced plate to having pierced plate? I think that's a pretty good question. So let me just put this down for a second. Now, the thing about why I would talk specifically about that helmet, because the other two, I bought them, they came with the pierced plate, didn't have to do anything. For a lot of us, we buy helmets and we think, oh, I can use this. And then you might go to a practice, they might take their measuring stick and go stick it through and be like, yeah, that's not safe, you can't use this, go get yourself some pierced plate. And you can do like I did, and you can order some pierced plate. Then it's like, crap, how do I get this onto the helmet? Well, you have a couple of options. And once again, I think that this largely depends on what tools and methods you have available to you. In my case, in others' cases, and I do have another, or I had another Saleh, I sold it, that you can see has the pierced plate visor. I'll try to see if I can remember to put a link to it. But if you go through my page, you'll see me talk about the Barino Armory Saleh. And that one I did sell to one of my students. But it does have the pierced plate. And the way they do it on that helmet is they rivet it at the top of the helmet. They rivet a strip of pierced plate to that, and they're done. So if you have the proper tools to drill through, holes on the top of your helmet, you cut a piece of the pierced plate, and you sand it, make sure that there are no sharp edges, and you could theoretically drill that with the same matched holes of your helmet, rivet them together, problem solved. In my case, I live in a condo, I do not have access to any of those things, so I decided with that helmet that you saw, I went to a machine shop local to me that had those tools. And I had a really interesting conversation with the owner of the shop, who was actually pretty excited for the chance to attach a piece of pierced plate to the helmet. In his case, he welded it. He did several TIG welds across the front of it. And quite frankly, you might be able to see them from the back. You really can't notice them from the front. But yeah, you can have this just welded on. I kind of stress to people, you have to be prepared to talk with or locate a machine shop that's willing to help you in this project. It's not like going to them with a motorcycle or something else. Someone who's usually into metal fabrication is what you're looking for in the machine shop. If they do metal fabrication, they'll probably be willing to help you. Won't be free, but in my case, I don't think it was very expensive. I think that for the job the guy did, which was very, very good, he charged me $100 to cut the piece out of here and to weld it on there. Might be expensive, that might be cheap. All I thought was that it was fair, because quite frankly, he had originally quoted me that it could be anywhere up to $200, and it would depend on how much time it took him to fabricate it. So it was fair, and I'm very happy with the result. Your mileage may vary. It depends on who you talk to. but I would definitely say don't like give someone a call, say, hey, I need you to build some armor for me. You know, go with your helmet, with some pierced plate, say, this is what I want. Can you do this? And get a feel for the person. With me, when I went to the guy to do the fabrication, he was like, yeah, did you go to that Renaissance fair? And I had been at the Renaissance fair he was talking about. So we talked about that, and he was like, oh, yeah, this is cool. I'd like to do this. So talking with the person will count for a lot. Few last minute notes about this video. Home Depot sells these carpenter pencils at, I think it's a quarter by a half inch, and as I said, if you put two, you'd have a half inch measurement. These are good for checking vision slots. That's a shout out to Brian from the SCA who keyed me in on that. As far as, once again, pierce plate, Amazon. One last note I want to give you is that in the case of that sallet, this is stainless and the sallet is mild steel. You need to let someone know if the metals are different. Just because how they go about welding, it's important that they know, because there is a way to weld stainless on a mild steel versus mild steel to mild steel or stainless to stainless. So if you have two different metals that you want welded together, make sure that you make your metal fabrication specialist, or if you do welding, that you know how to connect them correctly. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope that you found it helpful. If you do have additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And once again, my name is Ramirez. I'm with Tidewater Renaissance Fighting Arts. We're based out of Norfolk, Virginia, and I will see you in the next video.